Okay, so now that we have a scoreboard, let's write some code that allows us to keep score when we shoot down aliens. We should gain some scores, some points. So let's go into the settings, and I'm going to put this into initialize dynamic settings because it's possible to increase the score as the game progresses and it's harder and harder to shoot the aliens because they're moving much faster. You could increase the point values, but I'm not going to include this in this set of videos or require you to do it because it's already kind of long enough. So we're going to start with giving it 50 points, but it's here so that if you want to try to figure out how to increase the point values, you can. But we'll start off with 50 points, and you can really set that to be any value you want. But I'm going to put it in the dynamic settings because it is something that you could potentially have a scale for, but there's a little bit more involved than just that to make sure that it continues to work properly. So I don't recommend you do that right now. Get the project finalized, and then if you want to mess around with it again later, putting in some like super bullets or shields or something like that, then play around with it as much as you want, customize it, learn more about what you're doing. But right now we have a point value of 50. We'll leave it there. We're going to go back to, let's save this, go back to our alien invasions. And this is a pretty large file already. You can see it's kind of hard to find stuff. So one thing you can do here is you can minimize. So my init game, my init method, my run game, my check events, my check play button, check key down, check key up, check fleet edges. So you see I am just minimizing all of these methods so that all I see are the method names. And so that's going to make it a little bit easier for me to navigate through such a large program, is to kind of just make this smaller and condense. And then when I need to change something, I'll get in there and expand it back out. So when do we need to figure out how much point values are worth? I think we should figure out the point values and increase the score when my bullet collides with an alien. So we need to find the method check bullet alien collisions. So looking through here, here is my check bullet alien collisions. So we'll expand that back out. And now that we're in here, we set our collisions. And what we're trying to do now is that we are going to insert here, after we know whether or not there's been a collision, we're going to insert a new if condition. So if collisions, and again, this is going to just check. Collisions is a collection, a dictionary of all the different collisions that happened in a single pass through. And so if collisions, sorry, that's a if collisions and then a colon. This is if there was a collision, then something got added to this dictionary. And we are going to check that. So if something's in the dictionary, that means there was a collision. And so it will return a true. And we'll say self.stats.score plus equals self.settings.alien points. So again, if we weren't going to change alien points, you could probably just put a 50 here or a 20. But this gives you a way to kind of change things up the way you want it to work. So after we increase the score, we need to prep our scoreboard because it's going to change. So we're going to prep the score, and that will render our new point total from the score into an image, which we can then show onto the screen. So we'll save that, and we can go ahead and close this back down because we're done updating the score. But what happens now when we restart? Right? When we restart, we're going to need to change things back to where they were. Because currently we are only prepping the scoreboard and updating it when an alien's hit. We also need to be able to update this when we get a new score, a new game. So we're going to do our check the play button. So let's roll up here to check play button. We'll expand that out. And we're going to check in here inside the if button is clicked. And right in here, when we're resetting the game stats, we can go ahead and say self.scoreboard.prep score, and now that preps our scoreboard again once we are ready to reset. If we click the play button and it's in an inactive state, our scoreboard would get re-prepped. Now, the one more thing we're going to need to do is, remember I said that it was a collection. And currently, if it's true, it's going to add 50 points. But what if there were multiple collisions? Well, then we're going to need to actually condition this a little bit better. If collisions are happening, we don't just want to add the score one time. We want to do for aliens in collisions values. Again, because this is a dictionary, we have to kind of figure out what pieces we care about, right? So the values are going to be the aliens, right? The keys are the bullets. The aliens are the values. So for aliens in collisions.values, we need a colon here. And then we just need to tab that over. And then we are going to multiply by the length of aliens. Okay. And so what that's going to do is, by figuring out how long the aliens are, we're going to multiply and add that score into here. So 2 aliens, the 50 points times 2, add it in. Otherwise, it'll just be a 1, and it'll just give us 50 points. Okay, so there we go. Now we know that if we hit multiple aliens, we'll get the point values for those as well. Okay, so that is getting us the scoreboard, but we also care about high scores, right? Everybody wants to get the high score of the game. So we'll go ahead and keep this in the video. We'll go to game stats. So we'll save this. And now let's think about how we're going to get high scores. So we're going to come in here to our game stats where our score is set to 0. And we are going to come up to the initialization. See, our score is reset every time we restart the game, but our high score should never be reset. So we're going to go ahead and come down here, and we'll give us a little tag here that says high scores should not be reset. And so we keep that out of the reset stats, and it'll initialize at 0, and it'll stay at 0 until somebody scores higher. And then every time we start new games, whatever the high score was for this window, the time it was open, it'll be stored there. Okay, so what do we need to do now in order to make all this work? Well, we have to go back to our scoreboard, and we need to prepare our initial score images. So we can pretty much find where we did our regular score, and we can just come down right below that, and we'll do self.prep underscore high score. And that'll be a method just like we did for the prep score. And we're just going to write that here. So we'll define prep high score. And we'll say self here. And of course, we'll give it a doc string of turn the high score into a rendered image. And so in order to get this all together, we're pretty much going to set it up very similar to what we were doing before. So we'll do, we'll create a high score string, and we'll set that equal to string hold on one second. Okay, sorry about that. Let's format this into a string, and we're going to get it from self dot stats dot high score. Okay. Yep, I did it again here. Let's make that an underscore. Okay, so let's go back in here. Self.highscore. That looks good. Self.stats high score. Okay, so now that we have formatted it into a string, we could come down here and we'll turn it into an image. So self dot high score image is going to be equal to self dot font dot render, and then we'll put in the high score string, comma true, comma self dot text color, comma self dot settings dot settings dot background color. Okay, and there we go. So now we've created our string very similar to what we did with the score string, and we've done the self image just like we did there. And we're going to go ahead and center the high score at the top of the screen. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we'll use self dot high score rectangle to be equal to our self dot high score image dot get rectangle. So our image we just created, we're going to get the rectangle from there to determine what our high score rectangle is going to be. And then we'll do self dot high score rectangle dot center x, and that will be equal to self dot screen underscore rectangle dot center x. So the center x of the screen and the center x of the high score will now be the same. Now the reason we're doing just the center x and not just center is because the y values won't be the same center y values. We're going to have to establish a different y value. So self dot high score rectangle dot top will equal self dot self dot score underscore rectangle dot top. So that basically gets us to the same location. Our high score rectangle's top will be the same as our score rectangle's top, so that they'll always be in the same line with each other, level with each other. So we need to show the score. So we're going to go ahead and add into our scoreboard to be able to show both scoreboards. So self.screen .lit, and we'll send it self.high score image and self.high score rectangle. Okay, so now we've updated our show score as well, and that's great, but we now have basically two scoreboards that are doing exactly the same thing. We don't want our score to always be the high score. We only want our high score to change when we've reached a new high score. So to do that, we're going to create a new method here called definition check high score. And we'll send it to self. And to do this, we are going to, looks like I got a mistake. We'll fix that. To do this, we're going to check to see if there's a new high score. Okay. So we're just going to do a simple if condition self.stats.score is greater than self.stats.high score, then we want self.stats.high score to equal self.stats.score. So we're going to pass, if the score is higher than the high score, then the high score is going to be passed that score. And once it's passed, we need to prep our high score, because it's going to need to change. So the question is, where are we going to put this? Again, when we're prepping our score under check bullets and alien invasion, so let's go back to our check bullet collision, check bullet alien collisions, down here where we are prepping our score. So once we prep the score, we should then come in here and do self.scoreboard check high score. And that should allow us to keep a high score. So let's save this. Let's give it a run and see what happens. And we'll play, and we'll shoot down some aliens. And we'll see what happens. I'm gonna let this play out, and we'll come back. Okay, so as you see, I've lost the game now. I lost all my lives, and my score is 450. If I hit play, my score goes back to 0. My high score is at 450, and it stays at 450 until now. You see I've raised my high score, so it's now updating just like the other score. All right, everything looks great so far. So just a couple more things I want to add to this, and we'll do that in one last video. So take care, you're almost to the end.